Precious sat in her small apartment one evening, staring at her laptop. Her work with Daniel's team had been gaining recognition, and she had just received an email from a cultural exchange program in Seoul. They wanted her to represent Uganda in an upcoming youth leadership forum, an opportunity to share projects and connect with leaders from across the world. At first, she thought it was a dream. Going back to Seoul, returning to the place where everything began, her heart raced at the thought. But then reality struck. Seoul meant J.A. Minute. She closed her laptop and pressed her palms against her face. Part of her longed to see him again, to demand answers for his silence, to see if the boy she loved was still waiting for her. But another part trembled with fear. What if he had chosen Sejin? What if he looked at her as a stranger? The next day, she told Daniel about the invitation. His expression shifted, though he tried to hide the disappointment. "That's incredible," he said, forcing a smile. "You should go. It's your chance to shine." She bit her lip. "But what if—" "You're worried about him," Daniel finished for her. He exhaled slowly, his voice softening. "Precious, I won't lie. It hurts to see you still holding on to him. But maybe this trip is exactly what you need. To know for sure, whether it's your future or your past." Her eyes met his, grateful for his honesty. Daniel was right. The invitation wasn't just about leadership or culture. It was fate giving her a chance to face the truth. That night, she opened the email again. With trembling fingers, she clicked accept. For the first time in months, her heart stirred with something beyond sadness. Not quite hope, but the possibility of it. In Seoul, J.A. Minute was drowning in obligations. Dinner with Sejin's parents had gone exactly as he feared. Talks of marriage, of merging families, of a future he wanted no part of. His father's approving smile during the meal only made him feel more trapped. Later that week, as he sat in the office reviewing documents, one of his colleagues casually mentioned the Youth Leadership Forum. "They're inviting leaders from all over the world. I heard there's even a delegate from Uganda." J.A. Minute froze, his pen slipping from his hand. "Uganda?" "Yes," the colleague said. "Some young woman who's been working on cultural development projects. I don't remember her name, but I think it was Precious? Something like that." His heart slammed against his ribs. Precious. Here, coming back to Seoul. He excused himself from the meeting, rushing to the hallway to catch his breath. After months of silence, of aching and doubt, the universe was bringing her back. That night, he sat in his apartment staring at his phone. 100 times he typed out a message. "I heard you're coming. I want to see you." 100 times he deleted it. Would she even want to see him? After everything? After his silence? After the rumors? After Sejin? Still, the thought of her walking through Seoul again, maybe even passing by the cafe where they first met, ignited something in him. He knew then. He couldn't let her slip away. Not again. For the first time in months, J.A. Minute felt alive. Precious was coming back, and he was determined to fight for her, no matter the cost. The plane touched down in Seoul just after dawn, and Precious felt her chest tighten as she looked out the window. The skyline shimmered in the early light, the city both familiar and foreign all at once. She had dreamed of this place for years, but now the dream was clouded with memories of J.A. Minute, of promises under cherry blossoms, of heartbreak that still stung. At the airport, she was greeted by a staff from the Youth Leadership Forum, who handed her a welcome packet and drove her to a hotel near the conference center. As the car sped through the bustling streets, her eyes caught glimpses of everything she had once adored. Neon-lit cafes, hanok rooftops nestled between skyscrapers, and street vendors selling tteokbokki. It was beautiful, but her heart wouldn't let her enjoy it fully. That evening, she took a walk alone. The crisp air carried scents of roasted chestnuts and fresh coffee. Every corner seemed to remind her of J.A. Minute, the way he smiled, the way he made her feel like she belonged. She stopped outside a cafe with glowing lanterns. For a moment, it felt like déjà vu. Her phone buzzed. A message. Her hands trembled as she checked. "Welcome back to Seoul." She froze. The sender's name, J.A. Minute. Her knees weakened. He knew she was here. She typed a reply but erased it 3 times. What could she even say? Did she still trust him enough to meet? Finally, with shaky fingers, she sent, "We need to talk." That night, as she lay in her hotel bed, her heart refused to rest. Tomorrow wasn't just about the forum anymore. Tomorrow meant facing the boy who had once been her everything and deciding whether he still was. The next afternoon, after her first panel of the forum, Precious walked out of the conference hall, her pulse racing. She had agreed to meet him at a small park nearby, neutral ground, quiet and open. When she arrived, the winter sun filtered through bare branches. Her breath came in shaky puffs as she scanned the park. Then she saw him. J.A. Minute stood near the fountain, hands shoved into his pockets, his figure both achingly familiar and intimidatingly distant. He looked older somehow, sharper in his suit, but his eyes, when they found Hayes, softened instantly. For a moment, they just stood there, the silence stretching between them, heavy with all the words left unsaid. Finally, he took a step forward. Precious. His voice cracked on her name. Her throat tightened. It's been a long time. He nodded, his eyes glistening. Too long. And I'm sorry. For everything. For the silence. For making you doubt. I should have fought harder. She crossed her arms, not out of anger, but to steady herself. Do you know what it felt like? Waiting? Hearing nothing? Wondering if I mattered at all. His chest rose and fell as he swallowed hard. You mattered. Every single day. I was afraid. Afraid of disappointing my family. Afraid of losing you. And in the end, I almost lost you because of it. Taze burned her eyes. Maybe you already did. The words cut him, but he didn't look away. Instead, he stepped closer, his voice trembling. Then let me prove I haven't. Give me one chance to make this right. Precious stared at him, her heart a battlefield. Part of her wanted to run into his arms, to let the months of pain dissolve. But another part still carried the scars. And so, standing in that soul park, they weren't lovers, not yet. They were two souls deciding whether their story still had a future. A quiet settled between them, not heavy, but final. The sun was dipping low when J.A. Minute spoke again. I heard you got accepted to study abroad. Yes, she said softly. A master's program in international law at the University of Cape Town. It's been my dream for years. That's amazing, he said, his voice tinged with pride. You always talked about wanting to fight for people's rights. Now you'll actually do it. She turned to him, eyes glistening. I'll try. It's a 2-year program. I leave next week. He hesitated. Cape Town's far. I know, she whispered. But maybe distance is what we both need to grow, to find ourselves. He nodded, swallowing hard. So this is goodbye. For now, she said gently. Maybe one day our paths will cross again. But right now, I need to focus on who I'm becoming. He looked at her for a long moment, memorizing her face, then reached into his jacket pocket. Hey! It was a small silver pendant, shaped like a hanbok knot, the same one he'd once told her symbolized connection that endures through time. So you remember that someone halfway across the world believes in you. Her voice trembled. Thank you. They stood, the air thick with unsaid words. She wanted to hug him, but she knew as she did, she might not have the strength to walk away. So she simply said, Goodbye, J. Minute. And he replied, Goodbye, Precious. Go make the world see you. 1 week later, the plane doors closed, and Precious looked out the window as the lights of Kampala faded beneath the clouds. Her heart was heavy, but a new kind of peace filled her chest, one that whispered this is just the beginning. Cape Town greeted her with sea breeze and mountains wrapped in mist. The city felt foreign and alive, full of stories waiting to be lived. She promised herself she would make J. Minute proud, and more importantly, make herself proud. She studied harder than ever before, balancing sleepless nights and homesickness with determination. Each time she doubted herself, she touched the pendant around her neck and remembered that conversation in the park. Two souls saying goodbye, but not ending. And as the semesters passed, Precious grew into the woman she'd always dreamed of becoming. By the time graduation approached, she no longer felt lost. She had found her purpose. She was ready for whatever came next. The morning sun rose gently over Cape Town, spilling gold across the campus of the University of Cape Town. The Table Mountain stood tall behind the graduation grounds, wrapped in a soft mist that made the moment feel like a dream. Students in black gowns and colorful sashes filled the courtyard, their laughter echoing through the air. Precious adjusted her cap with trembling hands. The day she had imagined for years was finally here. 3 years ago, she had stepped off a plane with nothing but hope, fear, and a pendant that still hung around her neck. The silver knot JA Minute had given her that last day in the park. She had touched it every morning before class, like a quiet promise that she would not give up. "Can you believe it's over?" her friend Naledi asked, beaming beside her. Precious smiled. "It doesn't feel real." The sound of drums and ululations carried across the field as graduates tossed their caps, celebrating the end of an era. For a moment, Precious stood still amid the noise, her gaze lifting toward the mountain peaks. The wind brushed against her face, cool and familiar, the same way it had in Kampala that day they'd said goodbye. After the ceremony, she wandered away from the crowd and found a quiet bench overlooking the city. From up there, she could see the ocean, glittering in the distance. She pulled out her phone and opened the old photo she still kept, her and JA Minute laughing outside the school gates, blurry selfies at cafes, his hand half covering his face while smiling. A small, bittersweet smile touched her lips. "So much has changed," she whispered. "But somehow, it still feels like you're part of all of it." A message notification appeared just then, an email from the Korean Cultural Exchange Foundation. Her breath caught as she read the subject line. "Congratulations. You've been selected as one of the Global Fellows for our Human Rights and Cultural Diplomacy program in Seoul." Her heart pounded. Seoul, the very city that had shaped the beginning of her story, the city where she had first met JA Minute. She read the email again and again, hardly believing it. The fellowship would start in 6 months. She would return to Korea, not as a love-struck girl chasing a dream, but as a woman ready to live it. Precious leaned back, eyes closed, a soft laugh escaping her lips. Life really does come full circle. The pendant around her neck glinted in the sunlight. For the first time in years, she didn't feel the ache of distance. She felt ready, for closure, for reconnection, for whatever destiny was preparing next. As a breeze carried petals from a nearby jacaranda tree, she whispered, "I'll see you soon, so—" And deep down, though she couldn't explain how, she knew this wasn't just a return to a place. It was a return to the story that had never truly ended. The plane touched down in Incheon International Airport, the soft announcement in Korean echoing through the cabin. Precious pressed her forehead gently against the window, watching as the runway lights blurred into streaks of gold. It had been almost 4 years since she last stepped foot in Korea. The air felt charged, not just with memory, but with destiny. As she walked through the terminal, dragging her small suitcase behind her, a flood of emotions washed over her. The sounds, the smell of roasted coffee, the rhythmic language around her, everything brought back flashes of past. The first snow had just begun to fall over Seoul, dusting the streets with a fragile white glow. Precious stood outside the airport, pulling her scarf tight as her breath formed small clouds in the air. She looked up at the skyline. The city she once only knew through JA Min's stories now felt like familiar friends she was meeting again after years apart. Her fellowship began at the Korean Cultural Exchange Foundation, a sleek glass building near the Han River. Her first day was a whirlwind. Meetings, introductions, and a tour of the cultural program she would help coordinate. It felt surreal, like every decision she had made since that park had led her right here. That evening, she took a walk through Hongdae, where street musicians played guitar under glowing lanterns. She paused by a small cafe, the kind with steamed windows and quiet music, and smiled at the thought of how much JA Minute would have loved this place. Still chasing stories in coffee shops, "Ho," a familiar voice said behind her. She froze. The world seemed to stop moving for a heartbeat. Slowly, she turned, and there he was, JA Minute. Older, a little taller, his hair slightly longer, but the same warm eyes that once knew every secret she carried. He stood a few steps away, holding a takeaway cup, just as stunned as she was. JA Minute. She breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. He blinked, disbelief flashing across his face. "It's really you." For a moment, they just looked at each other, neither daring to move. Around them, Seoul kept living, people laughing, buses passing, but the world between them felt frozen in time. Finally, J.A. Minute spoke, his voice softer now. "You're here." She nodded, smiling faintly. "I'm here. Fellowship program at the Cultural Exchange Foundation." His eyes widened slightly. "You're kidding. I'm part of the design team for one of their projects." I didn't know you were coming." The irony of it all made her laugh softly. Seems the universe did. They both chuckled, and then silence again, but a different kind this time. Not heavy, just full. "Can I buy you coffee?" he asked. Precious hesitated, then nodded, "Only if it's not instant." He smiled, that same, slightly crooked grin that used to undo her, and gestured toward the cafe. "Deal." Inside, they sat across from each other by the window. The city lights reflected in the glass, casting soft shadows across their faces. For a while, they talked about everything except the past, her studies in Cape Town, his work designing cultural exhibitions, the places they'd both been. But when he mentioned Uganda, her chest tightened. "You know," he said, stirring his coffee slowly, "I went back once. To that park. It didn't feel the same." Her gaze softened. "I did too. Before I left. That was the last time I saw you." He nodded, eyes distant. "I never thought we'd meet again like this." "Me neither," she whispered. "But I'm glad we did." Outside, the first snowflakes began to fall harder, sticking to window pane like tiny white stars. For a long time, neither spoke. There was no need to. The silence wasn't a wound anymore. It was a bridge. As they left the cafe, walking side by side under a shared umbrella, Precious felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. This wasn't the same love they had lost. This was something deeper, quieter, reborn. And as they crossed the street, soul glowing around them, she thought to herself, some goodbyes are just the start of another hello.